Good afternoon to you. Last week we talked about ecosystem. We saw that an ecosystem can be defined as a combination of community and its environment. We also looked at what community is. We looked at what the environment is. Today we are going to look at the structure of an ecosystem. We've seen an ecosystem being a stable interaction unit between plants and animals in their environment. Ecosystem is made up of both living things and then non-living things, as we have already talked about. The living parts being plants and animals, while the non-living parts are the physical factors which affect the living organisms. So as far as ecology, as we studied last time, is concerned, there are three aspects of it. We have what they call habitat, niche, and trophic level. You can find time to find time to read on the niche and then the trophic level. Let's look at the habitat. I know some of you might have read it. A habitat is actually the physical place where an organism lives, or it's a place where an organism lives, or the natural home of a living organism. So for example, the fish lives in water. We have the shark which lives in the sea, whilst the tilapia lives in fresh water. We shall talk about all this. So basically there are two types of habitats, namely aquatic habitats, which is freshwater and marine, and then we have what we call the terrestrial habitat, which is habitat on land. So the aquatic habitat has to do with the natural home of living organisms living in water. This includes the sea, oceans, rivers, ponds, and then lakes and the rest. And then estuary. So you have read the estuary. Find the meaning of that. Aquatic habitat is made up of marine habitat, that's salt water, and then freshwater habitat, that's what free water. So the marine habitat has to do with life in the seas and then the oceans. What are some of the organisms that live in it? We have shark, octopuses, seaweeds, whales, turtle, and the rest. If you watch National Geography, you will see all these things. Now let's look at fresh water. This is a salt-free water environment which includes lakes, streams, irrigated farms, and the rest. Examples of organisms that live there include tilapia, catfish, mudfish, water lily, like I showed the pictures to you last week in the slide, algae, and the rest. There are a lot of them. And then the terrestrial habitat has to do with life on land. Organisms that live on land include us, we human beings, elephants, goats, lions, and then the rest. Examples of terrestrial habitat include farmlands, rainforests, parks, savanna, desert, grassland. If you go into these areas, you see lives over there. Some animals, rodents that live in the bushes live in these forest areas. Grasshoppers live in grasslands and the rest. All these are homes of organisms that live on land, who breathe in air. Remember, those in the fresh water and the marine water don't breathe air like us. They don't have lungs like we do have lungs. Because we have lungs, that's why we find ourselves on earth or land here to breathe it. Now, for an organism to choose a habitat, certain factors must influence that organism to choose that kind of habitat. For example, in the Bible, right from the beginning of creation, after God created man and man began to multiply, we realize that, if you have read the story before, there were famine. Abraham had to travel down to other places to go and look for food for his family and the people around him. So he migrated. It's because of what? Food. So if an organism lives in a habitat where there is no food, it has to migrate to a place where it will get food to eat. So food availability is one. And breeding, how they will be able to produce offspring, shelter where they will sleep, the conditions of the weather in a particular place affects the lives over there, or seasonal climatic changes. There is this video called "Animals Are Beautiful People." You can find it on YouTube and then watch. You realize that animals migrate from one place to the other when there is a climatic change. So for example, those that live in the desert, when the weather becomes very severe, they will have to move to a place where they can get water and food. During the rainy season, some part of the desert looks like paradise, because seeds buried inside begin to blossom. Fruits of the trees over there also begin to do what? Get a fruit on them, and the animals over there, lights over there, pick up. But when the dry season sets in again, they will have to move from one place to the other looking for food and then water. So climatic conditions is also one. Then natural disaster, talking about volcanic eruption, flooding, earthquake, and the rest. Even we humans, when we live in earthquake prone zones, we are advised to move from there. So in God's own wisdom, these animals have this instinct. When they find out that these are the problems over there, they will have to relocate, find a suitable place that they will live and have their peace of mind. And then mortality or death rates. How often are they dying? What kind of disease is there? What happens to them to take their lives? They also consider all these things and then choose a place where they will stay. So these are the factors that affect or influence a living organism's choice of habitat. Now, living organisms in an ecosystem interact with each other. What relationship has these living organisms? I have already told you that living organisms refers to plants and animals, and these organisms depend on each other for survival. For example, animals depend on plants for food and for oxygen, air, because plants manufacture their food through photosynthesis, which I know you know. At the end of photosynthesis, the plant food produced by the plants is used by animals for feeding. Plus oxygen, which is one of the byproducts, is also used by animals for respiration. Again, plants give us shade in the afternoon during the day when temperatures becomes very high. We seek refuge under trees because they provide us shade and gives us what? Cool winds to relax our bodies because of the excessive heat which we cannot contain. Again, animals give us water indirectly because their shade prevents the direct contact of the sun's rays, which causes evaporation of these water bodies to dry up. So they prevent the drying up of the water through evaporation by their shades. How do plants depend on animals? Animals give plants nutrients. When they die and decay or decompose and mix up with the soil, their decayed body transfer the nutrients in them into the soil for plant growth. Microorganisms in the soil, such as earthworm, add nutrients to the soil when they eat by burying these food debris and microorganisms in the soil for it to decay. And herbivores and animals that feed on plants also defecate into the soil, which fertilize the soil for growth. Again, animals help plants to disperse and increase in number. That is, dispersal of fruits and seeds by animals. For example, when you finish eating mango, you just throw the seeds away. You are helping the plant to disperse easily to go and germinate elsewhere to increase in its number. And then example is elephants and those kind of animals, monkeys in the bush. Termites also aid in decomposition and aerating of the soil. When you put something down, they will eat it and decompose it. Birds and insects acting as agents of pollination, which we have talked about. And then nitrogen fixing bacteria also improve soil fertility. I've told you that there are some bacteria in the soil who fix nitrogen into the soil to help the high content level of nitrogen in the soil. And then we look at adaptation. When we talk about adaptation, we are referring to an organism having special body features which allows it to be able to stay in the environment that it finds itself, to be able to reproduce, feed, and do all those things, provided the conditions over there is suitable to its body parts. So adaptation is defined as the ability of an organism to successfully live in its habitat due to the development of special body features. So we shall consider 3 organisms: the tilapia, the weaver bird, and the cactus plant. They are in your textbook. You will have to read on them in your textbook. I'm going to set questions on them. I'm not giving everything to you here. So get your textbook and then read on it. It's under the ecosystem. And then living organisms also have protective mechanisms that they use to defend themselves from their enemies or their attackers. For example, we human beings fight to protect ourselves, to defend ourselves. So the organism that attacks another organism is called a predator. So a predator is an organism or an animal that feeds by eating another organism, that's plant or animal. For example, the lion is a predator. It preys on these herbivorous animals in the bush, and the prey is an organism or an animal or a plant that is being fed upon by the predators. As I said, a lion is a predator, whilst the antelope is a prey, because the lion easily kills and eats the antelope for survival. That is how God has made them. Now you read on this also for more information in your textbooks, how living organisms protect themselves or their protective mechanism is found on pages 216 and then 217. Now let's ask ourselves some practical questions. Let's look at what differences can we cite between an ecosystem and then a habitat. What are some of the differences? And what are some of the reasons why a fish from the sea may not survive in a freshwater environment? Let's find out more and then we will discuss it on our WhatsApp platform. I have the answers for you, but we will have to discuss it. I'll put everything on the site we have to discuss it, and then see whether we are finding more information from other books or on the internet, so that we can discuss it and then look at the way forward. Your notes are ready on the site, and an assignment. I'm still marking last week's one because I wasn't feeling well. So if you have not done it, get it done and submit it. I'll mark it, and then you do what I've put there to do for you.